welcome back to another video where me, Michelle, a non-professional, gives my unsolicited opinion. Today we will be discussing probably the most complicated coming out about faking stories I have ever read. While this person does admit to faking DID, they also low-key are self-diagnosing themselves with other things. In the post they say they're not near adulthood yet, so I'm going to assume they're under 18, so it's understandable if they are still struggling with different things, but I'd love to hear your opinions. Today we will be discussing someone who admits to faking DID, while also self-diagnosing autism, BPD, DPDR, and what was the last one? Of course, bipolar. I know this is somewhat common a post and common a situation, but I believe everyone's a fan of some change in pace here and enjoy seeing someone realize and admit that they were wrong. I will not try to give many details here because I am pretty paranoid because it was a pretty recent development that I acknowledge that I am a faker and have cut off those who encourage me, so I do not wish to give out any particular details. This is really embarrassing, but I personally believe it's healthy for me to write this out and let it go. I hope that writing this allows former fakers to come out with their stories of their own and help someone realize it's okay to admit you're faking, and then they can start to recover. I am a former system faker and former faker of Psychosis. To start off, I was a very chronically online kid and learned about DID and systems from Tumblr. I was very eager as a lonely and bored kid, so I had been very intrigued by the idea of being able to have basically what were imaginary friends that I could talk to. I studied up on all of the system terms and information that I could find on Tumblr, teaching myself everything that came from people who glorified systems and misinformation. I had known about systems and kin for a bit, and I believe that at some point in middle school when I was 13, I learned about systems and learned about tulpomancy and tried to force myself to have alters by calling them tulpas, by just pretending I had them to talk to. My quote-unquote headmates, as I called them, were actually Jeff the Killer, Gino sans the Skeleton, Killer sans the Skeleton. I would draw Jeff the Killer, calling him my older brother, and pretend that I was talking back and forth with Gino sans the Skeleton in my head. Eventually, after about a week, I quickly dropped them because it was so much work when I knew that I could not really convince myself. Then, as of late 2020 or 2021, as you can see, the internet has quickly popularized the idea of IRLs and delusional attachments or DAs. Of course, I, like everyone else, leapt gladly on the opportunity to find a new way to be unique and different by claiming I was a fictional character, and the only one there was. I knew very much that I was faking this, but my first lie was in a new kin server that I had decided to join where they had a rather long no double IRL list. It was at this time when a certain character had came out very recently, and I wanted to claim him in my mind, so other people wouldn't do it first. So I pretended that I was an IRL of him despite knowing that I had no psychosis symptoms and I was not psychotic. Since everyone else was an IRL, and when you were an IRL on that server, you were the only person who could be that character, which made you unique. Okay, anyone else who knows anything pretty much about DID watching this must be so confused right now. I think what this Discord server was getting at was that you can't have like fictives and factives of the same person, which is obviously impossible because you cannot help who your alters are. As far as we know, DID can only be developed by severe childhood trauma, and obviously alters cannot be formed consciously or edited like a Sims character to make them the most appealing to you and your life. It's strange the way that these things are being thrown around the same way as, you know, fan fiction or in the comment section being a vampire was. It's very sad because these children are making up these complex trauma histories and making alters based off of this trauma. I had decided that I needed one too, since I wanted to be unique and fit in with this group because I liked talking to them so much. When I made my friends refer to me as him, I always felt super uncomfortable being called him because I knew I was not him, and it was very weird to have it validated without question. Then with another character I wanted to be very unique and liking, so I claimed to be an IRL of him as well. I had picked this character because he was quite minor, a character in the fandom. He was a rather unpopular Homestuck character because I wanted to fit in, and I knew that I could not pick to be an IRL or a delusional attachment to another character as they were all already on the no doubles list, which to me meant that someone else had claimed them and that they were already taken, so I and no one else could have them. I would lie about my psychosis and try to force myself into psychosis. I would search online for excuses on how I was psychotic despite having no real symptoms, claiming anything I saw was a hallucination. And since the character was an animal, I tried to literally force myself to think that I was him time and force myself to behave like an animal, despite knowing that I was not. I would purposely endanger myself and try to force my thoughts because I wanted so badly to be psychotic, and I knew that I was not. I would spend time Googling disorders that had psychosis to validate myself and my delusion and psychosis that I did not have. Anyone who has gone through mental health issues, including psychosis, I cannot even imagine how you feel about that. It can feel like mental illnesses are destroying your life before you get help. The road to recovery includes like inpatient, IOP, PHP, years of therapy. People worry that when they're in psychosis, they might hurt themselves or others. There is no cute TikTok way to spin it. Incredibly unsurprisingly, once I left this server because it grew very inactive, I no longer felt the need to claim I was psychotic anymore, nor was I an IRL or a DA of the character and never mentioned any of it ever again. Once again, since this was quarantine with lots more focus on the internet, more and more people started claiming to be systems, even more widespread on Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok. I knew that I had an actual dissociative disorder, and once again, I was a very lonely person who enjoyed fitting in. I would spend time researching information to self-diagnose. I would come across resources that could only have one dissociative disorder and not multiple, and be very angry because the information I found went against what I wanted, which was to be validated for the disorder that I did not have. All found information supported me having an entirely different dissociative disorder, DPDR, and if you have DPDR, then you automatically cannot have DID or OSDD. But I would ignore it because it did not validate or agree with my desire for being a system. At this time, I was friends with a new group of people who I enjoyed spending time with, who most of them were claiming to be systems. I saw them bond over being a system and bond over their alters. I saw them fit in together having DSMP alters, Undertale alters, and FNAF alters. FNAF alters. Being a system to them was a very important personality trait, and was their main personality trait. I wanted to belong. I knew that I was not a system. I knew I could not be, but I claimed that my symptoms were OSDD. I claimed OSDD because I knew I did not fit the amnesia part of DID, because I did not have DID and I never did. However, soon I found myself using letter sign-offs like V at the end of my messages. I was aware that I was nervous to use pluralkit because I knew that I did not really think I should be using it. However, this friend group and another system server that I was joining encouraged me to use pluralkit and call myself a system. When people started agreeing with my desire and validating it, I eagerly did not look back and quickly called myself a system. Like psychosis, I quickly tried to force myself to fit what I was told was a system. I started to try to talk to nothing in my head, having back and forth conversations with the voices in my head. I started trying to make them feel differently. I started having switches to characters that I never had before. I will preface this by admitting that yes, I am an actual victim of abuse. When I would be yelled at and cry, I would hold myself and start telling myself that it was fine because it was an alter of Spinel from Steven Universe who was taking over, and it was okay because we were switching now, and then get very frustrated and angry when nothing actually happened because there was no way for it to actually happen. Michelle note, this was a major point that I think needs to be noted because I personally have a lot more empathy for this person knowing that they were literally doing it as a way to defend themselves from abuse. Despite knowing that I did not have DID, I told myself I did because it made it easier for me to accept my life and how terrible my situation actually was. I started off very slowly, claiming to only have a few amount of alters, and then I quickly started to split more alters, all of which were fictives and factives. I had a factive of a popular artist on Instagram, who funnily enough is an actual diagnosed system themselves, and I believe they are actually really a system. So I had claimed that I had two factives of their already existing alters, and I know that I made them very uncomfortable with it, because I told them personally about it. The factive I had of them was only because I thought that their aesthetic, appearance, and art was very cool and I wanted it, but I didn't know how to. So claiming to literally have them as separate people in my head was a quick solution. In school and when I was bored, I would tell myself I could instead pretend to be someone else fronting. I would tell my friends that I was a different alter and switching. I started using all of those yellow nonverbal stim emotes because everyone else used them in the servers. And now all of a sudden I would claim that I was nonverbal, age regressed, or a little alter. I dated someone who also claimed to be a system with DSMP fictives. I claimed to have fictives of every Dream SMP character in my system: Dream, Technoblade, Tommy, Ranbu, Tubo, all of it. I claimed to have alters of Junko, Miyu, Kokachi, and Nagito. I claimed to have several Sans of the skeleton alters, Chara, Frisk, Gaster, and Grisby alters. I claimed to have a Solo, Sherlock's, Gamsby, Jade, John, and Dave alters. Most of my alters would front for only a day or two, and then I'd move on to a new one, splitting instantly when I wanted to, and then forget them. I found myself from a system with 4 members to over 80 in mere months. I called myself polyfragmented, when I had fragments only because I didn't actually have alters. I would invest OCs and characters on the spot and claim they were alters I had just discovered. I would talk to other alters with the same source as me. I would claim my alters were speaking to each other and tell everyone the stories and things they had said. My friends started talking to my alters and telling me how much they liked them. I started telling everyone I was a system, having statuses with our fronters and writing down things about them. I knew I had no headspace, but I made up one because everyone else talked about how giant their headspace was and how they saw their alters interacting with each other, and it was common in system spaces to talk about what fake activities your alters were somehow doing. I would get angry with myself because I had told myself I was a system and the internet said all systems had these magical headspaces. But I did not have one, and I knew this. I could not make a headspace that I fully believed in, and I knew this. This is the point in the post where things start to get slightly shaky. I mean, I do want to say that this person is incredible for learning this, and they're still going through their healing journey. This person describes how they are very excited about a diagnosis, and I don't know, I mean, a lot of people can be excited to finally find out like the missing puzzle piece of what's going on, but to others it can feel like an absolute life sentence, and it's terrifying. During this post, you said that you were self-diagnosing yourself with bipolar, BPD, autism, and DPDR. I'm not saying that you do not have these. I am not inside your brain. I'm also not a professional. Some people who self-diagnose themselves are looking for a reason to the reason they're feeling all of this turmoil and pain. You see on TikTok people with CPTSD, DID, BPD, and you're like, but I'm going through so much pain and I only have depression. Meanwhile, people forget that even depression can be unbelievably debilitating to your life, in the same way that other more rare, I guess, disorders can be. You don't need to try to one-up your own mental illness in order to get validation. As I said, I am an actual victim of abuse, and I'm actually mentally ill, awkward, and autistic, just like most fakers say they are. The only disorders that I mainly truly had were autism, making me feel weird and like I didn't fit in, OCD, causing compulsions and mental health paranoia, DPDR, causing 99% of my dissociation symptoms, bipolar and BPD, making my emotions feeling so extreme, I would say they were my alters, and that my emotions were different people. I wanted to fit in, and as I had never really had much of a certain identity, because I was a young, uncertain teen discovering myself, that I wanted to join on the new trends that everyone else did, combined with actually having no sense of myself from BPD. I was a lonely kid whose main comfort was the internet and spent hours on it using Discord and Tumblr, so I was beyond deeply influenced by it. I wanted to know what was wrong with me, so spending my time self-diagnosing mental disorders was a very convenient way for me and something I relied on. I would hyperfixate on researching one mental disorder and slowly convincing myself that I clearly had it. I did this from SPD, CZPD, ASPD, OSDD, DID, and BPD, where I would research to the point I started gaslighting myself unintentionally that I had these disorders because their symptoms made sense and gave me comfort. I wanted an answer to what was wrong with me so badly, and I wanted a way to be unique and stand out in a way that was my identity, that I so often would self-diagnose myself. I did not use self-diagnosis for anything except to reassure myself in my faking and what I knew was wrong. I had no interest in actually healing or getting better. I just used them as a way to fit in. I felt after saying I was a system that I could never go back to before. No one ever talks about what you're supposed to do after you realize you're not a system after all. They tell you how to find out you're a system or what to do about it. They talk about your new alters and coddle you and make you feel good and make you feel as if you matter and fit in and as if you're one of them. I felt I couldn't do anything because now that I said I was a system, I could not go back. I felt as if I told people I didn't think I was a system after all, that I would be humiliated and that they wouldn't want to speak to me anymore because I wouldn't fit in with them anymore. I had so many friends and servers where the only thing we had in common was our mental illness. And if I didn't have that, then they would realize I had no use to be talking to them anymore and that nothing would matter after all, because all our interests, conversations, rants, jokes, and memories involved about how mentally ill we were and how we were so different from singlets and unique. I am now nearing the age of adulthood and have no interest in things like this anymore. To make sure that I accept that I could never see myself going back to living like that anymore, I have left all the friends who influenced me to claim the disorders, left all communities and spaces for being a system, left all system information behind and started meeting new friends friends who are not calling themselves systems, and who will call out fakers and do not validate just anyone at random. I'm soon to be in recovery as well. I'm excited to genuinely start therapy and medication and no longer have interest to start collecting my mental illness self-diagnosis like Pokemon cards, and am very excited for professional diagnosis and parts of my identity that make up me as one entire person instead of using my mental illness as my only trait. I look back on this very shamefully and am deeply embarrassed admitting to all of this. I am fully staying away from anyone who looks to be doing the same things I did and picking my friends and communities very carefully. I hope anyone in a similar situation knows it's okay to want to change it. You can take the first steps you need to, no matter how slowly. You can leave all the people who encouraged you behind because that community is beyond toxic of a space to be in. Take it from me. Or tell real friends that you don't think you actually have these disorders anymore, and they should accept you for it and praise you for taking the steps of self-admittance. Get better, be honest right now, and notice that people in these spaces never recover or push for recovery and healing for themselves or others. All they do is echo each other's opinions, encourage their behavior to be better than each other, and refuse to change. I could not heal and recover until I cut all of this out and decided to change for myself. You can and will find yourself as a person in what you really like and are really interested in, and what you really enjoy doing, not in your mental illness. You do not have to live like this forever, and it will get better again. I am beyond happy with what I've done, and I cannot see myself doing that ever again. I am healing and very grateful for it. OP has done an amazing amount of self-reflection, but it seems understandably like you're trying to rationalize your struggles. The thing about self-diagnosing is that, for example, OCD is not just compulsions and paranoia. It's severe intrusive thoughts that cause anxiety and compel the individual to perform rituals and compulsions that combat that anxiety. This often overwhelms a person's life to the point where they struggle to function normally. Bipolar 2 is a mood disorder marked by being less manic than type 1, but can still see a person exaggerating in very risky impulsive behaviors. BPD is not, I don't know how you would glamorize it, like, oh my gosh, I'm edgy. It is actually marked by risky, impulsive behaviors such as drug and alcohol abuse, gambling, unsafe sex, overspending, SH. Not always, but is oftentimes related to childhood trauma. Mental illness doesn't have to, but it can destroy your life. And when you see people faking disorders on the internet, it's heartbreaking. It's not a quirk to make you more interesting. Additionally, since this person is, I think, under the age of 18, it's not impossible to get diagnosed with things like bipolar and BPD under the age of 18. However, specifically with BPD, a personality disorder, typically it is diagnosed over the age of 18 because BPD can be confused with a lot of things that are just being a teenager. Definitely not in every single circumstance. There are people diagnosed in teens. In the comments of this post, people in the UK say that it's very unlikely that a person would get diagnosed with a personality disorder under the age of 18, but in my experience in America, it happens, but it's probably not common. I talk as if OP is gonna watch this, but to OP, I hope that nothing in this video, came off as putting you down, because truly you are going through a journey right now, and taking these big steps for self-reflection, especially at such a young age, is commendable. Let me know you guys' thoughts on this. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, turn the bell on if you're feeling risky, and comment below. Thank you so much, it helps with the algorithm. Comment below if you could choose any mythical creature to be real, what would it be? Mine was between a dragon and a fairy, but I ended up going with fairy, obviously. Thank you so much to each and every one of my members. I appreciate the support so much. To everyone, have a good day, night, whatever the case may be, and peace out.